Bring on the dancing girls and put the champagne on ice. We're heading in to Sin City. We're about to win in Sin City. Welcome to Let's Bet, the show for folks who love betting on sports but hate losing money. I'll show you how to increase your sports betting bankroll by gaining confidence so that ultimately you can have the lifestyle that you deserve. I'm your host, Scott Pritchard, pro bettor, 31 years, founder of PritchardsPicks.com, home of Pritchard's Pick of the Day. Took third place in the Circa Invitational a year ago, was fortunate to be asked back. They expanded the field this year from 16 last year to 25 of the world's best, going head-to-head versus the number this year. They've been cutting. It's a dog-eat-dog cutthroat business that I've signed up for. They've been cutting 2 contestants each and every week. We're down to the final of 10. With 3 weeks to go, I'm in the top 6. Right there, cash goes to the top 3. We're all fighting and competing for the prestigious green jacket. We broadcast every Friday, Las Vegas, Sin City, 1 to 1:30 Las Vegas time on demand on PritchardsPicks.com and on your favorite podcast and video distribution platforms. To reach out to us, email us at letsbet@PritchardsPicks.com. That's letsbet@PritchardsPicks.com. I know a lot of you are tuning in because you are savvy shoppers looking for that 20% discount. I'll be giving you a discount code that you can use. It's applicable throughout the weekend. 20% off all picks packages, including Pritchard's Pick of the Day. I mentioned contests, but my guest, what I can do, my guest can do better, and I can prove it. This guy is a 2-time Circa contest winner. Most recently, just a couple of weeks ago, during a 4-week window, ATS against the point spread, pro football, 5 games per week, 20 games. 19-1. Are you kidding me? This guy net won $150,000 to make it holla. Welcome, my friend, Chris Farley at Farley Sports. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Scott. I got to say, the last thing I'm ever going to say on this show is that I'm better than you at these contests. You've been doing this for a very long time. I feel very fortunate for that contest win recently, and very fortunate to be on the show. And I heard that this show hasn't been on air very long, and it's already getting fantastic viewership. So congratulations on even more success. I think this is going to keep on going and going to even more viewership, and it is really an honor to be on your show.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're slammed. I know you're busy spending all of your winnings, but I do want to address the fact I've been doing this for 3+ decades. I've been in Las Vegas full-time betting sports for 31 years. I've had success in contests, but dude, you've been doing this for what seems like 20 minutes. I say that because I know it's been 4 to 5 years, but you are on the fast track. Unlike me, I'm a very slow learner. You just hit the ground running. But a 2-time Circa contest winner, let's talk about your background, because I've learned in life that I don't care what you're really, really great at. Most people suck early before they become really, really good at something. So would you mind delving into your background? Maybe if you went from 0 to hero, because I know in talking to you that you didn't just come out of the womb picking winners.
Yeah, that is for sure. Well, I guess I'll start with, I would say probably about 10 years ago now, maybe 11. I just started to realize that sports, I mean, I was always a huge sports fan, right? As are most of us sports bettors. That's kind of our like entry point. But I started to listen to sports betting podcasts, and some better than others, but I would always be on the road a lot. Had a son to go pick up, or my family to go see, or I was in the military at a certain point, so a lot of traveling, and I would always pop in sports betting podcasts. And I found that a few years later, when I was just constantly looking for, my wife says that I'm never going to be completely satisfied. I'm always going to look for the next novel thing. But sports betting has stuck around, and I was trying to still kind of figure out, like, what am I going to do? What am I supposed to do with my life? I was in the military. I studied philosophy and theology. I thought I might be a priest at a certain point, believe it or not. That I couldn't be further from that vocation at this point. But I studied acting. I went to grad school, found a good government job, but it didn't fulfill my soul. So there was a lot of soul searching, and I just kept asking myself, kind of like how to find that thing that I really want to do. And in around 2020, right around the time that COVID hit, I kind of had an epiphany. Like the thing that I do the most naturally as a hobby every day is I look at scores, I look at box scores, I look at, various sports, I listen to sports betting podcasts, and I'm consuming this anyway. So maybe I can do something with this. So I took myself a little more seriously. I made a few cold calls. You might know Kiev O'Neill at the Odds Breakers, who connected me to people like Kyle Hunter, Brad Powers, just fantastic names in the sports betting industry. And from there, I just started writing. I did really well in the NBA right away. I hit 58% in the first half a season that I handicapped the NBA at the Odds Breakers, and then just kind of branched off on my own. And a buddy and I entered Circa in the 2021 season, and ended up winning fifth place, which that year was Tony Durbify, who I understand that you also know, just a great guy, right? I think he still has one of the best, if not the best, Circa record of all time. So we had a really good record. I mean, it would have qualified for first many years, but very happy to take home fifth. My buddy and I, who's not my buddy anymore, and that's kind of why this latest contest win was such a vindication, affirmation for me, is because of course, it was built on the mentors that I've had this whole time. Las Vegas Chris stands out as someone that I talk to a lot. But I did it on my own. I wasn't listening to podcasts. I wasn't reading anything. I was just trusting my insights and my instincts. And so for the past 4 or 5 years, I've been doing this on a professional level, that is trying to earn real money from it, putting myself out there in the public space. And I think every aspect of my background, whether it was the discipline from the military and kind of knowing the psychology of guys working together, certain guys thriving under pressure, certain guys not being able to thrive under pressure whatsoever, to philosophy and theology, to a lot of things that I've done in my life. I think it all kind of helps me, right? Because I'm not a statistician. I know at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to numbers, but I digest as much of that as I can, and then I apply my own unique perspectives, which has a lot to do with psychology and sociology, right? This is human behavior ultimately that we're studying and trying to predict. And so far, so good, Scott. And I'll tell you that quarterly contest. I mean, I feel like I could write a book on the psychology and emotions and spirituality that I went through, because it was very weird. And I think that I just stuck to what I was doing, and that ultimately worked. And that's the advice I would give to anybody.
Interesting when you talk about fellow sharps or fellow professional sports bettors like Tony the Great Gordon Durbify, who won the 2021 Circa Millions the same year that you took fifth. It seems to me, you mentioned Las Vegas Chris, my buddy Chris Sanook, Chris Piper, who won the Survivor contest. Kyle Hunter is certainly the real deal. Brad Powers has been on this show a couple of times. I've learned in life that like attracts like, meaning that plumbers tend to hang out with other plumbers, comedians hang out with other comedians, sports bettors hang out with other sports bettors, and attorneys tend to hang out with other criminals. But I want to talk to you about something you touched on: psychology, mindset. 19-1. You're talking about, I want to talk to my viewers as an example. If you are at work and you have 7 coworkers and you're in a pool and you outpick your coworkers, congrats. But this dude, Chris Farley at Farley Bets, this guy outpicked over 5,800 contestants during a 4-week window. And he didn't do it once, he did it twice. 19-1 just a few short weeks ago to net win $150,000. Let's talk specifically about your process, maybe what makes you different than the average bettor.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I do think I'm definitely different in some very obvious ways. First of all, I really think, and I would love to actually hear what you think about this too, Scott, because I think in the sports betting industry right now, from what I notice, like kind of annoys me sometimes is I mean, ultimately sports betting, it is about the number. right? At the end of the day, you have to understand where the value lies. But the thing I like about contests is those numbers are locked, right? Like those numbers are not going to move. You know what you're dealing with heading into every week on Thursday afternoons, usually in Circa. And so I don't incorporate any models. Like I don't run my own model. I'm not particularly proficient. I mean, I can do enough on Excel, and I look at data sets and I pay for a few things that I find to be really valuable information. But for the most part, it's pretty macro what I'm looking at. I think that we have a lot of sports bettors now who could be really deterred by the fact that we have fantasy sports and prop betting, and it makes us get very micro. And while the granular side of things is really important at times, and especially in prop and fantasy betting, for the most part, what these teams are showing us behaviorally as a group, right, or some of the dynamics within the group, like a coach and a quarterback. I mean, not much matters more on an NFL team than the synergy of a coach and quarterback. You're seeing that even last night, right? Jim Harbaugh, um, the what he brings to that Chargers team and what he's bringing out of Justin Herbert. You're seeing with Bo Nix and Sean Payton. Bo Nix is obviously a very good student of the game. He's showing that in his rapid improvement this season. So things like that I put my own measurements and metrics on that to a degree, but really I'm studying these teams from an observational standpoint, that psychology of the relational things that are happening on every team. And then of course, situationally, right? There are certain situations where like you just can't trust the Dolphins in the cold. I mean, that's a pretty obvious one. But there's a lot of little situations that show up too. This weekend, obviously, we have a lot of teams who are trying to stay in playoff contention. Some teams might not care as much. But then there are individual players who are going to still care because they're fighting for their career. So you have to weigh and measure all these things. And it's not all about motivation and psychology for me. But I would say there's not any one thing that I look at. And I certainly digest a ton of data, but I don't like adhere strictly to power ratings or a model or a data set of any kind. It's kind of just me with me and like analyzing. And I'll be honest, Scott, sometimes aside from putting the time aside to do it, right, and to have the discipline and kind of the mental space to make room for it, there's not always a like beginning and end exact process. I think my process is that I'm open, like I'm into the psychology and the social dynamics of it, and at certain points of the season, I think I thrive more than other points. I mean, I think most of us in the beginning of the season were pretty perplexed by a lot of things that were going on. But that's also why Circa is so awesome, right? Because you can win contests at any point in the season because of the quarterly part of it. So, it's kind of a roundabout answer, Scott, because it's hard to tell you exactly what my process is every week. But talking to the right people, I'm on one show per week talking NFL now, which I kind of love, because I used to be on more than that. And I talked to the great Lou Finocchiaro, who I just respect so much. I think he has a great process. So it's putting yourself around the right people, being married or having a relationship where someone gives you space and trusts in you, and then applying your own strengths to these games every single week. And for me, I think I understand people really well. I love observing people. And that kind of observation, sometimes I don't really need to put it much pen to paper because I care so much about it, right? Because I'm watching it so much as well. So kind of roundabout, Scott, but it's maybe one day I'll put it all in a book and we can actually process what I do every single week. But the mental space and the like spirituality almost is not to be so esoteric, but that tends to be the most important part for me.
Great input in listening to you talk about a myriad of different things that you look at. I've oftentimes said in my sports betting seminars, Chris, everything affects everything else. And it's somewhat weighted. Some things you might look at, whether it be starting lineups, injury reports, weather conditions, refs when it comes to NBA, the home plate umpire when it comes to Major League Baseball betting totals and whatnot. There are specific trends, but to your point, it seems like you look at anything and everything. And then being an independent critical thinker, I want to back up for a second because I was intrigued by your transparency, your honesty, and listening to one of your podcasts. And you reference it here, but you were too nice to go on tilt. But it's okay to go on tilt because I think a lot of us can relate to people that have betrayed us in the past and or it's one of those things, unfortunately, trust no one. It's a dog eat dog, cutthroat world or business that we're in the world of professional sports betting. But you had mentioned that you had a business partner initially when you won the first Circa contest, having success. Do you mind talking about that? Because you had mentioned that you no longer talk to that person. Is there a specific reason why, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot?
No, I love it, Scott. And I love that you're all about that too, because I think we all do go through things like this together. I know many people who enter contests with other, friends, maybe business associates, whatever. So this is a guy who was my best friend. We met when I lived in Baltimore, just at a bar. He was cheering really loud for the Eagles because he's an Eagles fan. I'm a Giants fan. I was born in Northern Jersey, so I was born into it, which is not so great right now. But I appreciated, his passion, right? And we just kind of connected. And over the years, and we started talking about, well, what if we enter this Circa contest, right? That sports bettors started to hear about. He was trying to get into the industry a little bit too, but he wasn't able to do quite as much as I was. So I started a podcast with him. We had a great process where we talked about it every week. I still to this day think that he's very sharp. He understands line movement and kind of why things are happening. I'm not one of these people who's going to say even back then it was all me. It certainly wasn't. He was a part of the process. At the same time, because I kind of brought him into it, as many of us who are successful at anything come to learn, is when you start to become a success, some of your friends might not love that very much, right? They might try to kind of pull you back down, and it's because they care about you. I remember hearing about this. I think it was Man Cow, like the Man Cow podcast back in the day, or I guess it was a radio show. But remember this episode specifically because it related to me even back then, and this was like when I was like 20 years old. But people care about you, so they don't want you to go ahead. They don't want you to get to a different level. They don't want you to separate from them. But when you have an opportunity to become a success, you can't let those people hold you down. And then, of course, if somebody really cares about you in the way that they should, they would want you to succeed. So the next season, when we entered Circa together again, I say together, I was the one that went to Vegas again. Like I did everything. I did all the administrative parts of it. And then I wanted to put in a few entries on my own because I had the brand Farley Bets. I wanted to continue promoting that and doing more. I think he took a little bit of offense to that. We had some difficult conversations. Ultimately, it ended up in him deciding not to be a part of the contest anymore. And then some really crappy things happened from that, which I won't get into. But long story short is, I knew that at a certain point, I do want to stand alone in this, unless somebody's going to go at the exact same pace as me and have the exact same mentality as me. Because I was churning out like a ton of betting articles. I was putting out plays for customers, and he just wasn't as dedicated as me, and it didn't feel fair after a while. And Scott, at one point, because I'll never forget it, I was at Circa after our first win. We were eating a big steak, probably downstairs at that restaurant at Circa, which I forget the name of it. Steve,
Prime, Don's Prime.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's Barry's Prime. Don's Prime is at Fountain Blue, but Barry's Prime, it's 5-star, man.
Oh, it was a gigantic steak. It was awesome. I think it was a tomahawk. But we were both drunk. Obviously, we're having fun off of our contest win, and he had the gall to say to me, and I could just be too nice sometimes. I guess I'm an empath, but he was like, "Chris, come on, admit it, Chris. Was it 51-49 me? Do you think it was just a little bit more me?" And, because we were just both having fun, I was like, "Yeah, sure, Steve. Sure, sure, sure." But I never forgot that because I was like, why did I say that? Like I did all the legwork with the administrative stuff. I set up the podcast. I kind of got him into the industry so to speak. So I certainly held my own, but I'm not too prideful. I don't want my ego to get in the way. So I didn't care at the time. Long story short, it feels very good winning this last one on my own. Because and I don't even know if he knows about it. I'm not connected with him anymore. But like I said, if you have people in your life who you feel like are holding you back from taking that next step, take the next step because uh, if they really care about you, if they really were your friend, they would want that for you anyway. And I hope everything is going well in Steve's life, but it turns out I do pretty good on my own too.
I want to talk a little bit about sports betting philosophy. To your point, listening to what you say, again, a lot of times when you have success, you have a big fat target on your back. And I've often said that if people aren't talking about you, good, bad, or otherwise, you're probably not having a whole lot of success. A lot of times you'll come in with competitors will come in with maybe some envy and or some jealousy. But when it comes to sports betting philosophy, the thing that I really resonate with you is the fact that you're an independent, critical thinker, yet you always keep your eyes, ears, options open. We never stop learning. I've always had a yearning for learning. The more you know, the more you grow. Maybe this is why I'm around. But I want to ask you, Chris, specifically, what would you say are the top 1 to 3 traits or skills that a successful long-term winning sports bettor must possess based on longevity?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is a conversation that I had with Las Vegas Chris, which put my mind at ease. And I give a lot of credit to Las Vegas Chris, and sometimes he can kind of be hard on me too. So you could soften up a little bit there, Chris. But he also instilled some really good lessons for me, and he's someone that I look up to. Is I think he's very bright. And one of those is that there is no one way to do this. Like a lot of the rules that you hear propagated, pontificated on X, um, aren't necessarily thoroughly true, right? It might have worked for those sports bettors that are saying it, but it doesn't mean it has to apply to everybody. And in this case, we were discussing how, like, I don't sit down at like 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. and do all my handicapping for like an NFL Sunday. I am just constantly paying attention to what's happening. So I think attentiveness, no matter which way you do it, like for me, I was talking against the micro, but this is where I guess it is the micro. I'm just always paying attention, right? So Monday, I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at NFL.com, I'm looking at some other places that I trust that are not just news, and I'm just constantly digesting. I also think number two, separating yourself emotionally from it is a huge part of it. Probably one of my best records ever was this past summer in the WNBA. And there's nothing wrong with the WNBA. I actually really enjoyed the product a lot more this summer too. But I barely had any time to watch the WNBA. I don't, to be honest with you, the summertime is kind of a break for me anyway. So I don't really watch a lot of sports. There's a lot of things to do with the family. How was I winning so much if I was not watching any games? It's because I was removed from it, right? I was removed from the emotional part of that. And I think that's a huge lesson that I had to learn because after I won that first Circa contest, I would get very emotional. If I lost, if I had a losing streak, if I didn't win in Circa again, if, I was like if somebody would, criticize me, I would fire back at them and, say something else, tell them to meet me in Vegas, stuff like that. So I had to learn the hard way that keeping some sort of stoicism, and that can manifest in any way you want it to, no matter what you want to use, religion, beliefs, whatever, um, keeping that stoic belief that a loss is a loss. It's okay. You are going to lose. I mean, probably the only industry where you lose, even if you lose 46% of the time, you're still considered pretty damn good at this. So you just got to get used to that. So, one, there's no real method. Two, take the emotions out of it and try to stay stoic and just, keep your eyes on the prize. Um, Man, for a third one, I would just say hard work. I mean, this industry, and you probably, if you listen to my last podcast, Scott, then you probably heard me say this. Recently I've felt a lot of yearnings to get out of this industry. I have a 22-month-old daughter who I would burn the entire world down to know she's okay. Um, I have a wife that I love very much, a family. I have a main job that I have to pay attention to. And so it can just be really, really time consuming. I mean, if you want to make space for playing video games, having a lot of hobbies, whatever you want to do, odds are during the season that you are handicapping or in a contest, if you take it seriously, you're not going to have a ton of time for that because even in a 32 team league, there is a ton of information to digest and to pay attention to. And I did say before, not to get overly like, don't get overwhelmed in that information, right? Analysis paralysis is a real thing, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't take hard work. So, you need that hard work and determination and resiliency during that hard work to get through it. So if I had to knock it down to three, I guess that would be the three, Scott.
Two-time Circa contest winner Chris Farley at Farley Bets, my guest on Let's Bet this week. We're going to come back with best bets, but before we do that, I'm going to share with you the coupon code, the 20% off coupon code applicable throughout the weekend. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and including the Saints Packers game on Monday night. It's good for all picks, all packages, including Pritchard's pick of the day, even the recurring weekly, monthly, daily picks. So please keep that in mind. The code is BUCKS. BUCKS is in the Milwaukee Bucks. Congrats to the Bucks for winning the NBA Cup. I went to both semi games last weekend. T-Mobile, Las Vegas, won both games. Came back Tuesday for the final and lost. Very humbling experience. I had the OKC Thunder. They played the worst game of the season, shooting-wise, offensively, 5 for 32. No excuses. Tuesday is history, actually, and today's action is a mystery. We're coming back with best bets. No pressure, Chris Farley, but our mutual friend, Tony Gordon, when he was most recently on this show, he gave out not one, not two, but three winners, ATS against the number, swept the board. I've been trying to live up to it ever since. Tony the Great Gordon took second in the Circa Invitational a year ago. The Mad Russian took first. I was fortunate to take third. And right now in the top 5 with 3 weeks to go, top 6 actually, I think, as we speak. Right now in the Golden Nugget contest, for those of you that keep asking, okay, no one's asked, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. Golden Nugget contest, season long, 7. No totals. I love totals, but it's all point spreads, college and pro football, 7 games per week. Hundreds of people competing. I'm in second place and third place after last year taking 6th and taking 9th. 3 weeks to go. That's 21 games. Wish me luck. We're coming back with best bets with Chris Farley at Farley Sports right after this.
Hi, this is Brad Powers, professional handicapper and college football bettor specializing in the college game. And you can find me on Twitter, BradPowers7, or on my website, BradPowersports.com. But the main purpose here is to talk about my man, Scott Pritchard, who I've had the opportunity to do not one, but 2 shows with the living legend himself, Scott Pritchard. Love talking with him. He is successful. You need to get his picks, Scott Pritchard picks. And folks, it's all about one thing and one thing only. Let's bet.
Brad Powers, pro bettor specializing in college football. This guy was on the show talking about he bets. I mean, he specializes in college football. And to give you an idea what kind of a work ethic he has, consistent with Chris Farley, consistent with myself, January last year, he bet 10 months early, Ohio State -4 against Michigan. How good is that? I'll tell you how good it is. Kickoff 10 months later, Ohio State not favored by 4, but 20 and a hook. Winner, steak and lobster dinner. You would think you're getting 16, 17 points, the best of it, only to lose straight up 13-10. Are you kidding me? Thick skin, short memory. You have to be so mentally tough to do what we do as long as we've been doing it. So Brad Powers, thank you for your input. It's time now for Best Bets with Chris Farley at Farley Sports. He just went 19-1 and netted $150,000. The second time he's done it in the past 4 years. He took 5th in the Circa Millions contest when Tony the Great Gordon Derbify, who's been on this show, as I mentioned, a personal friend and mentor as well, back in 2021, Farley took Fifth, as Derbify set an all-time record with his win percentage ATS against the spread. He net won over $1 million. I need to start hanging with these people so we can do dinner and drinks. Chris, when you come to town, dinner and drinks on me. 60 seconds or less if you can share with me 1, 2, 3, 5 best bets for the weekend. Go.
5 bets in 60 seconds. Oh my. Okay. I'll try to get as many out as I can here, Scott. I'm gonna go first with the Seattle Seahawks at home +3. If you look at Minnesota's last few games, I'm not impressed. I mean, they could have easily lost to the Falcons, actually. That score was tied in the third quarter. Everything was going crazy at that point. A lot of turnovers, penalties from the Falcons. Even last week, that was more about Chicago. The week before, 3 weeks ago, they should have lost to Arizona, and they didn't. I think Minnesota's time is due. I think Seattle at home +3. That is a field goal game for two teams competing for the playoffs. Either way, I got Titans +3.5 as 2. Gross, right? Titans +3.5. Really, really gross. But I love that Bill Callahan and his team is getting lambasted by the media this week, being called soft. It's a divisional game, and Mason Rudolph, in my opinion, is a way better quarterback than Will Levis and his turnover-prone ways. I would suggest to tease down the Atlanta Falcons. I'm a Giants fan. That team has given up. They have a worst quarterback room in the NFL right now, and I think Michael Penix Jr. is the real deal. I had that opinion before the preseason. He looked pretty damn good in the preseason, and I think he's going to be a catalyst for that offense. Man, I got 2 more. Let me add another teaser leg to that. Cincinnati, there's no reason why they shouldn't win that game and win that game by more than a field goal. Browns took out Jameis Winston, and with the Chargers winning, now the Bengals have a clear path to the playoffs. They just need Denver to lose in Week 18, so you can count on Cincinnati. Hopefully, you can count on Cincinnati winning by more than a field goal there, or a field goal or more would do it. Let me at least give you one more, Scott, because I don't think I'm hitting the right time here, probably over 60 seconds. But Tampa Bay -4. Yeah, sure. The market is respecting Dallas a little bit right now. I mean, they're a home dog, so +4 at home is still pretty disrespectful. But backup quarterback, and their defense has looked pretty good lately. Okay, it's looked good against the Panthers and the Giants. Look at who else they've played in the past 5, 6, 7 weeks. When they faced a formidable offense, they got whacked every single time. The Bengals, the Texans, Eagles, you name it. So here comes Tampa Bay riding a lot of momentum. They're looking to take over the NFC South. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay -4 as well. And I think that's 4 plays, Scott. If you got time, I can give one more.
Yeah, you've given out 5, but let's do 6. One more. It'd be great.
Yeah, I gave out one teaser, so but let's see. Carolina, I think, is getting underrated this week. There's a terrible performance last week. The Cowboys got to Bryce Young the entire game. Arizona cannot rush the quarterback the same way. I think Bryce Young sits in the pocket a little more, gets comfortable, and they at least get some vengeance after that terrible loss last week. So +4.5 is a pretty sweet spread for me on the hometown Panthers.
5 best bets from Chris Farley. He speaks. We all should listen. 5 best bets, including a 2-legged teaser. I've got one play one time. It's not how many you bet, it's how many you win. Monday night game, the New Orleans Saints. Ugly, bad, terrible interim coach, terrible leadership, bad quarterback. Give me the Saints plus the points. Points mean more than opinions. +14. I've talked before, key numbers betting football, 3, 7, 6, 10, 14 in that order. I've got all the key numbers covered. 27-14 could be the score late in the fourth quarter, and that could be your final score. Complete domination by the Packers, and they're going to celebrate, but they don't cover. They have to, 15's a dead number, so they have to win by 16, more than likely 17 or 20 for you to lose. The Saints plus the 14. See the cashier. I'm 9-7 since I started giving out my best bets versus the number on this show. Let's bet. Wrapping things up with Chris Farley at Farley Bets. Chris, where can people find you?
At Farley Bets on X. I also write a little bit for Sport Money and PicksWise, and I'm on a show every week talking NFL bets, or NFL primetime games mostly, with the great Lou Finocchiaro. You can look that up at Clubhouse TV on X. Thanks so much for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Chris, you are a 5-star, rock star, superstar, handicapper, pro bettor. Thank you so much for being on the show, and you'll be back, my friend.
I can't wait to be back. And you said I might be a part of that Circa Invitational someday. Someday, if that happens, count me in. I would love it.
Well, I can tell you the guy to talk to is Matt Humans. It's his contest, but if anyone should be on that contest, you should be, my friend, for sure. 19-1 ATS versus the number over a 4-week window, 5 games per week. Remember, the coupon code for the 20% discount at Pritchard's Picks is BUCKS, BUCKS. That's BUCKS, BUCKS for the 20% discount code. To reach out to us, email us at letsbet@pritchardspicks.com. That's letsbet@pritchardspicks.com. Coming up next week, David O'Hara, the tri-state radio TV host of Hawk Guide, will be on my show. January 3rd, living legend Jim Feist will be on Let's Bet. And following that, another living legend, icon, famous celebrity, great guy, back-to-back winner of the Superbook contest, Steve Fezzik. The hits just keep on coming. For Chris Farley at Farley Bets, my name is Scott Pritchard. Bring on the dancing girls and put the champagne on ice. We're heading into Sin City, and we're about to win in Sin City. Until next week, see the cashier.
Amazing.